Yeah. Showtime. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to Embodied Oneness. This is my first session. I'm very excited to be here today. And just a little background on me. This is kind of like a kickoff of a new phase of my career. I've done lots of presenting. I've done lots of training before, but I'm moving into teaching a new subject matter that aligns with my heart's passion, which is how to help people to be one with their heart and soul. And it's some work I've been doing on myself for the last 10 years. And Spirit's now like, all right, you're ready. You're far enough along to help other people. So this is a series of classes to help other people do that. So this is just session number 1. So let me go over the next. So the Riverside, so this is a map. Some of you are very familiar with it, but some people in the audience might be doing it. Riverside is part of like a system of one boulder, and there are lots of different parts to it. There's the Riverside's a private club, and it's I've been involved since April, and it's kind of ramping up. It's very new, it's exciting, it's emergent. It's got lots of different parts to it. We've got classes, we've got like co-working space. There's all these like bright friends looking to collaborate. A lot of open-minded people, very intelligent, new ideas. It's very exciting. It feels like a potential new mystery school. It's very exciting here. We talk about like spirituality and healing, and we're playing around with all kinds of alternative ideas. And there are one bowler has other facets too, and there's like a farm. We're working on like sustainability, and we're like playing got this app with the gift economy. So it's very exciting. A lot of cool, innovative stuff happening here, and this is a great time to get involved because we're just starting to take off. The systems are in place. The right people are coming and merging. So I'm very excited about Riverside. One logistical note just about bathrooms. For those who don't know, the bathroom's right around the corner. And we'll take a break in about an hour, just to give you a little break. It's a 2-hour meeting. So let's kick off the show. So just about today, just want to set the context. So today, my main agenda to do is to let you know about what this course is all about. So I'm setting the stage for the whole course. And I'm telling you about me. Like, why am I even qualified to talk about this? What are my background? So we're going to get a little bit into my story. Qualifications, and then in the blurb I put out some terms, some key questions, and I'll review them quickly that I want to answer. That'll help you understand the class a bit more. And then I'm a very adaptive presenter. I've done a lot of presentations, and I'm always changing it up. And I do have a preference for experiential most of the time. So but I think for this class, the first part of it, I'm gonna be talking at it because I want to really set who I am, what this course is about, and then I'd like to finish with something experiential. We'll either pick one concept that we'll learn for ourselves to take home, or we'll get into some questions and answers. So I'm going to ask that those in the audience, if you have questions, if there's a quick question about clarification, feel free to chime up, but if it's like a deeper question, I prefer you wait till later, because that would like potentially throw us off the flow, and I just think it's important to get this information out so there's a lot of clarity about me and the course. Cool. So let's get on to some key questions. So these were some things I wrote in the blurb, and I'm going to at least start to answer. I'm going to give people a high-level answers to these kinds of questions, and then these are questions that will be explored in greater depth during the course. But we'll get into like how does consciousness work, and how do we transcend the traps of the mind? That's one of the big themes of the class. So definitely going to give you some high-level over that, and then over time, we'll learn tricks so we can apply it to our life. And another one is, what is embodied oneness, the name of the class? What does that even mean? What does it mean to be one with your heart and soul practically? Because I'm a conceptual guy, but I'm also a practical guy. I mean, if it doesn't affect my being or other people's beings, I'm less interested. So I like the merger of ideas and behaviors, and so put it all together, make it practical, make it usable, make us better people, better at bringing our passions and our gifts to the world. So then what is a spiritual boogeyman in individual and collective defense mechanisms? So that's a fun term. It came to me in some of my own spiritual work. And I want to define that clearly so people know what I mean by that. And I want to talk about this thing about, some people call it gnosis, some people call it knowing the light of truth and why it's important. Because that's part of being your heart and soul, is this new kind of ability that I actually accidentally discovered, and I'll talk about that in my presentation today. And then there's this new term that I've learned about, it's called epienergetics. It's really exciting about energy, it's different, and I'm going to talk about that, why it's important. And then I want to talk about amplitude. We think about that a lot in music, but we're going to talk about it in spiritual development. Like, what does that mean in amplitude, and why is that really important? So these are some questions we'll get, so at least some high-level answers, and then throughout the course, you'll learn how to apply those to your life. So, all right, so I'm going to drop you into my life a little bit, just a little bit about my story, a little context setting. So I'm in my late 30s, and I'm doing organizational development consulting, which is a mixture of like business and psychology. I'm going into organizations, I'm doing leadership training, I'm doing consultation, I'm helping them assess what's wrong with the organization and do redesign. And it's work I like, but I have this deeper passion to be an entrepreneur, and I can't get out of my own way. I also have this deep passion to have like a romantic relationship that I just can't seem to materialize. So I'm in this place where I'm in this job, life's okay, I have a decent job, decent pay, I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of hobbies, but just something about my life just doesn't feel like I'm not 100% on. And I'm starting to be like, shit man, I've had this problem for a while. I feel like stuck. And I'm just like, I gotta do something about it. And 40 was just, this mid-age reflection period, and this is about 10 years ago. I'm 50 next year. So, let's see. Yeah, another quality that is that I was very disembodied. So I was very heady in my head, really wasn't feeling body sensations, thinking, constant thinking. I was taking ADD medication, distracted. And one of the reasons I couldn't get my dreams come true, I was just constantly, I kept taking on new things. I gotta do that, I gotta try this, I gotta try that, I gotta try this. So I couldn't stop doing those behaviors. It was like compulsive, like addictions. And also I wasn't in the best shape. So anyways, I was getting to this late 30s, and I was like, I gotta do something about it. Like I can't live with myself like this. This isn't enough. I came here to do something else, and I gotta, look, I only live once. I wanna make my dreams come true. So I was already into development, but I'm like, I gotta go, it's not enough. Whatever I'm doing, it's not enough. And I was like, I gotta quadruple down on development. I'm gonna address these issues that seem to get in my way, and kind of off I go. So this is kind of that part. So I'm a huge music fan. I go to a lot of, not a player, but I was going to like a concert a week, and I was organizing things, and I had a music collection, and I'm DJing here, I'm sharing my love, but I actually decided to tone my music a little bit back down and get a little bit more into audiobooks. I need to like learn new information if I'm gonna get unstuck. That was one of my big changes. And then another big change was I decided to change my diet. I was really into this guy, Tim Ferriss, who's all into like hacking the mind. And he had told me about like this paleo diet, and I started, because I was eating like so many carbs, it was crazy, and so much processed food, and I totally changed my diet. My energy started increasing, and I started doing exercises, and I got these crazy like P90X things. I was doing it every day. Like I was really gung ho. I was like, I'm doing this change. And then another big change was meditation, and I'm going to talk about that one a little in depth, but that one really rocked my world, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Let's take these one at a time. So one of the first real big impacts that changed my business in terms of audiobooks was I learned about this thing called integral theory. And for those who don't know about integral theory, this guy Ken Wilber, who's from the Denver Boulder area, he's like a metaphysics guy, and he like looks at everything like above, and like kind of takes like a bigger look and finds patterns that look at all this crazy complexity, whether it's like science or spirituality or east or west, culture, systems, psychology, behaviors, the physical body. He just went way up high, and he's like, whoa, dude, I see like simplicity in this complexity. And he's like brilliant, and it really helped me get focused and see things in a different way. And you'll see in my slides that a lot of the things I'm saying, it seem like very ambitious. You're like, John, this could be like 20 classes, but no. But what I'm here to say is when you know how to go meta and see these patterns in the world, everything gets simpler. And so we can take on this crazy complexity. It's a very necessary tool. He also helped me, I grew up in a home that was like, my parents were Jewish primarily, and my parents weren't that into it. I was like bar mitzvah only because my grandparents, my mom wanted to appease her dad, and I was done with that. So I'm never like a big religious person. So I would consider myself always, for most of my life, was agnostic. And because I associated spirituality with dogma, with these rules, and I didn't know another way. And Ken helped me think about spirituality in a different way. He's like, no, spirituality is with the truth. It's like the deeper truths. It's like looking at these deeper patterns and really just understanding reality. So it's like part philosophy, but also part science, part psychology. It's just mixing everything together, and he's just very eloquent. So he's had a huge influence on me, and he introduced me to meditation, which I knew nothing about at the time, and why that was important. He introduced this concept I'm going to talk about too, called like purification or shadow work, which is to kind of help release suppressed emotions. So I didn't really know it was a bit off my radar, and so it was very life altering. So because I'm kind of launching like a new career here, I'm a big fan of like honoring where I got stuff from. Because we're all like in Buddhism called dependent origination. We're all like just bring generative from, we bring things together and we take it to higher levels. So I'm going to do this a couple times during this. I just want to, Ken Wilber is the founder of Integral Theory, so I just want to say, dude, Ken, you rock my world, I love you, you totally had a huge impact on my life, and I honor you. And when I talk about stuff from you, I'm definitely going to mention your name and give you credit, just like I do with my other teachers, because I'm a big believer in that, giving credit. Because I just stand on the giants of others, and my creation is just built on finding other people. It's another level of integral. Actually, Ken would call it super integral. He's got this thing where he's got this level integral and then super integral. All super integral just means is you're combining more and more things. And that's one of my biggest passions is synthesizing information to have more impact, more power. And what I really want is to have people be happy and fulfilled, and also not individually but collectively. How do we have a peaceful world where we feel free and we can support each other in giving our gifts and appreciating other people's gifts? It's kind of like what I'm all about. So, all right, so I want to talk about meditation. Man, meditation changed my life. It changed my life. And I'm so grateful. So I was going to an Integral Theory meetup in Boston, and one of the guys, I was telling him, I'd be friends with this guy, my friend Ted, and he's like, Jonathan, I go to this great meditation program, and we were having like lunches, and he was like, you should go check this out. And so he guided me to this guy, Dan Brown. It's called Pointing Out the Way. And I didn't know what I was getting myself in. I couldn't tell you, at that point in my life, I didn't know the difference between a mantra meditation and a heart meditation and concentration. I know 10 years of study, I know lots about it. But at that point, I knew nothing about any of this. So I just, whatever, Spirit guided me to this guy. And I found out that this was actually a pretty sophisticated meditation program. And Dan was actually asked by the Dalai Lama to bring some of the high-level Tibetan but meditation practice, the highest level ones, which are called Vajrayana. So I didn't know this at the time, but I guess there's apparently different turnings in Buddhism. They're called 3 turnings. I'm not going to get to it in depth, but I'll just say that they were giving me the 3rd turning. So it was the most recent and most cutting edge, the most esoteric practices. So it was called the Vajrayana, and specifically Mahamudra and Dzogchen they were teaching. And I think Kazimir Shivas was another one that's considered in the 3rd turnings. But there are certain practices. So I don't know, good fortune, maybe I did something in a prior life, but somehow I stumbled into something that was really good. And Dan likes to break his meditation practice into all these different parts. It was like an 8 days. So I went from no meditating to all of a sudden I'm going in for 8 full days in a row. So it was like a big commitment. But the Mahamudra practice, which is where they start with, is breaking the meditation into steps. And so there was like a concentration, how you break concentration. I think they have this like 9 stages, like half concentration. And honestly, when I started this, I thought concentration was meditation. I didn't know there was more to meditation than that. I was naive. But it turned out that was like just a small part of it, and there was this thing called insight meditation. Now, insight meditation in this world is about actually deconstructing the mind. Has like all these different parts to it and different levels to it. And it was like, how do we get into right relationship to these different levels and different, how do we get in relationship with our thoughts? How do we get into right relationship with feelings? How do we think a part of like our higher self, which he calls like metacognition. There's all these different parts, and it was like break all these very specific practices. And Dan, genius, this guy's like a Harvard psychologist, and he's like a master in like 5 or 6 things. He's written like 20, 30 books. And he's like weaving together stuff. So he got garnered the trust of the Tibetans because they were a little worried that if we bring this West, that us Westerners are going to screw up these practices. But he was able to, with his strong character, strong integrity, to convince the Tibetans to work with them to bring it here. So Dan translated them and he made them westernized. So they gave him a little bit of leeway to kind of make it optimal for Westerners and the Western culture. And one of his other genius is pith instructions. So pith instructions are just like guided meditations. He is so precise and so precision that his instructions are like majorly life altering. They really get you focused what you really need to. He's literally, I consider him a pith instruction genius. Love that guy. And he exposed me, I thought I was just going to get my mind quiet, but he actually was like new metaphysical ideas that I had never heard of. I guess something that's called idealism. And idealism is like a philosophy that is more focused on the reality here is actually primarily about mind, and that maybe everything appears physical, but the idea that maybe it's really just light coming from our consciousness. It's almost like we're seeing like a virtual reality. It almost like feels real, but really exists. But maybe the ultimate reality is like that. And so he got me seeing how that could even be possible. So I had no idea about that idea, and because of how he pointed it out, it made me start to consider maybe I should be thinking about the world a little bit differently. I wasn't expecting that at all. But he's so good. So he calls his meditation awakening. So there's different kinds of meditation we talked about. Some people associate with like mindfulness. Again, these are all good stuff. Concentration, heart openings. There's a zillion different kinds of meditation. Dan's goal is awakening. So I talked about, so awakening is something very specific. It's actually a combination of a lot of things. So it has all those other meditations in there, plus other stuff. But one of the things they talked to me about was we stain our minds. And it's just like the natural part of development. Like how do we stain our mind? What do I mean by that? When something's like super painful or we don't want to deal with it and start pushing it away, like I don't deal with that, I don't want to kind of suppress it, that's an example of staining our mind. And then that information goes into the body, into the unconscious, and it starts coming up in the unconscious. It's like, oh, you don't want to deal with that consciously? Well, guess what? It's still dealing. It's forcing you to deal with it. So some of the techniques is how to surface that and deal with it in a healthy way. So it's not impact. It's not biasing your whole perceptions, right? And so another way is actually if you want something so badly, you crave it. You start thinking about it. Oh, I want this food, or I want this romance, and you start thinking about it over and over again. And that's another way of staining the mind. And it keeps you out of presence. Both of these things, pushing away or putting out. So you do a lot of techniques. So how can you be really present, but also connected to everything? Like, I don't know, it seems like weird how can you be connected to everything. But if you actually have this idealism, that things are just kind of like minds and minds. So like maybe there's like one giant mind or awareness, and everyone else's consciousness is kind of inside it, and they're all kind of like connected. And he shows you the exact pith instructions and exact techniques to connect to everything, or connect to larger dimensions of reality. And like those was all new to me at the time, but I was just like, whatever. My style when I come into something new is not to like be like, oh, that's wrong and I'm right. It's like, well, I'll try it on. I'll see. I kind of like be like, I'll take a neutral perspective. I'll try it as if it could be true, and I'll see what results happen. that's how I approach things. That's how I find out what works for me. Yeah, so ultimately, it's like teaching you this. It's really a Buddha training class, and a Buddha is able to just be with everything as it is in the moment, and kind of processes and filter it so it doesn't stay in the mind. It sounds kind of simple, but it's actually pretty hard to pull off. However, there are really cool tools to do that, and a lot of them came from this. Again, a lot of it was breaking down to baby steps, and there's this term like I like to use called right relationship, where you're trying to learn to get to be in right relationship to different parts, and that can kind of change. So yeah, what I was going to say about that. So one of the things, actually, karma is a real thing in Buddhism. It's like actually has a very specific meaning, and it's kind of different. It's a word for momentum. And so you're like, remember how we talked about like your we kind of get these patterns that we kind of do over and over again. So that's like your karmic patterns. And they get so deep ingrained into us, and it's so ingrained that they're actually connected to like levels of consciousness that I've gone with myself, and some of them are very hard. As we all probably know, some patterns are just really difficult to get rid of. I'm sure we can all relate to that, and it's because they've been pushed down like so far, and they're so deep. And I was stuck, I was talking about before. So this started to give me an idea. And so one of the ways karma takes place is this thing called egoic defense mechanisms. So I learned this actually not through Dan, but through other things. And it's really this idea of like when we have like a trauma, like something significant, we're kind of like, like how I was handling this way of being, it's like not working. And then you come up with like a new strategy for like, well, I'm going to do it differently. And a lot of this happens in childhood, or deeper even, like past lives and stuff. I'll get into that more later. But these defenses, we actually we come up with these painful stories, and we kind of push them down, and we to protect ourselves. We come up with just a way of being. We push it, and then we like forget about it. Or sometimes we like something happens to us, we make up a really nasty story about ourselves. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to think about being a loser or being an asshole or being inadequate or whatever it is for you, some sort of flavor of inadequate. But what this class showed me was that there was a way to actually exhaust the bin. They call it Dharma Dhatu exhaustion. So Dan was like, if you do these techniques and you learn to practice your mind, what happens is like, if you stop creating new karmic impressions in your mind, then the old ones just want to come up. I don't know if you ever heard this kind of thing that the body's always trying to heal itself. It's like, and that's kind of like the suppressed stuff that's coming up, like these traumas or it's like the body actually wants to heal itself, and then we have these other parts that like distract us and keep us from it. But there's some natural mechanism. So kind of like showed me that was possible. One of the reasons I'm glad that this came first is it kind of gave me like a vision for the future of like what's possible. And they would call, at the end of the game, he was saying that like the natural state is actually kind of related to like how like a baby was coming into born. It was like the firstborn. It was just seeing everything as kind of perfect. They realized, oh shit, life's a gift. I got this for free. And that they could just have more positive qualities of mind. And this is like proven it was that. And so it kind of really gave a vision of what's possible going forward. Let's see. I talked about this a little bit before, but I got introduced to like different dimensions of reality, and I could get something called knowing. And knowing is like you're just like saying something, and you know for sure, there's like no doubt. Like sometimes it's coming, like it feels local, but sometimes it comes like from somewhere else. When you learn to connect to other dimensions of reality, you can actually connect to, because you can connect to the part of the universe that sees everything. It's like, oh, I need you to do this right now. And so you have like non-local awareness. It's a real possibility, something I had no idea about, but when I tried it out, it worked, and my life radically changed. And I'll tell you some stories about that. And then there's this idea of like, so when we see like something, energy is everywhere. I studied some chi, and you can like pull chi, you can actually do like a chi practice called chi pack. You're just like pulling in. Energy is everywhere, everything's energy. And then when we make something solid, we've got like a chair or a person, and so this is like formed like bounded energy, and then there's like everywhere else is this unbounded energy. And so this technique started to introduce me to this connecting to unbound energy. There's like all this energy around, and we can connect to it. And I think everyone can relate is when you have more energy, you feel good, you have better perception, you have a better time, a better experience. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that later. We'll start talking into heavy energetics, but energy is critical, super critical. This class, although it never really talks about it like that, is also aligned with that. And then I found, one of the things I found out cool about like Buddhism as I got more and more intimate with it and I got to know it well, it was really a tool to align with the process of life. That's what it's good at. It's like, how can you, they would call it liberation. How do you get rid of the traps of the mind? It's not like a religion of dogma. It's actually a set of, at least in these practices, I'm sure there are other parts of Buddhism where there's dogma, but it's like really just a set of practices to help us align with life, to just be one with it. One expression of life. And then I introduced me to this new concept. I had no idea. I'm like coming into this class with a materialist, and like, yeah, when these meditation masters they turn themselves into rainbows. I was like, what? It's kind of crazy, but it's a rainbow body. And if you read throughout history that there have actually been masters, it's kind of like spirit. I think it's like some sort of acknowledgement that like you are one with life. And so it showed me like how that is possible. And I love this line. This is something. So I went to this class where it's called 21 Nails, and it was like 21 people achieved rainbow body in their life. Or about to like what were some of their best tips. And one of their tips was like the number one tip was this one. It's like, yeah, you got to align with like what's happening in life, which is this. I'll say the sentence and I'll explain it. The path opens into itself, all by itself for the sake of its own realization. So it's basically saying like our lives just kind of like unfold one moment at a time, just to kind of show what it means to exist and what it means to be alive. And that's all that's happening. If you kind of like you're like, oh, that's what's happening. It just kind of happens by itself. You kind of like rest into that kind of feeling. So it's really freeing. And again, I'm just introducing some of these things and then talk about some more of them in other classes. So just some observations after I did the class was like, yeah, it was much more about just, I was thinking, I had all these thoughts in my head I'm not supposed to think. I had a wrong idea about what meditation was about. It was like, no, we need the mind, we need to think. Some thoughts aren't inherently bad. There's some thoughts that aren't serving us anymore, of course, but so that was like a huge like, whoa, okay, I had the wrong idea going into this. It was like, how can we be one with all the parts of the mind different? I gotta tell you, man, the techniques in here were so simple and so clever, but I never would have thought of any of these in a million years. I was like blown away about the simplicity and power of it. Just wow. And then the last one was, I was really hard at, I actually picked up a lot of the metaphysical insight parts. One of my strengths is a good analysis, but my concentration was like really hard. So I actually, I was on AED, AED, it was really hard for me to stay focused. And I had to really work with this, man. I was so bad. I was one of those meditators who'd like close their eyes, put the timer on, or I'm just gonna sit for 5 minutes, look over. What? Only 5 seconds went by. It was like literally, very frequent be like, oh, and I couldn't even get any kind of semblance of positive momentum if I wasn't eating right or if I didn't do like a huge exercise first. But I was so motivated. I was just like, I'm doing this. I'm giving this a try. So I really stuck with it, and I took the class. I think it was like summer of 2011, and I stuck with it. And it was a lot going on in the class, and people take it many times. I took the level 1 class 3 times. It took me like 4.5 years before I think my concentration is good enough where I'm really ready off my game. And when you take the class numerous times, you see it differently because your practice is like in a different place. But yeah. So I'm actually going to start another class in January. It's also about being with your heart and soul, but it's more focused, meditation focused. So I use a lot of tools to be with your heart and soul, and both classes will have both, but the other week class I'm going to start is going to have a meditation focus, and I'll teach some of this, and I'll show how I combine other things to make it even easier to meditate. And then this class is more focused on some of the other stuff. So I want to pay homage to Dan Brown. Dude, I love you. I did like 4 retreats to him. I went like every week to his Sangha things for like 4 years and peppered him with questions. Dude, you're a genius. I love you. Thanks for doing all that work to bringing all that from Tibet over here. I nailed it. What was that?
Just for clarity, this isn't Da Vinci Code.
No. It's a different. Yeah, if you're gonna Google him, put Dan Brown meditation. I'm not just saying I'm great company. Harvard psychologist. Anyways, brilliant man. But yeah, I love you. Thank you. And I also want to thank this guy. So when I did my first level 1 class, John used to be his protege on Churchill. And if you're going to be a serious student of dance, you have to have a coach. So you can meditate on your own and then you meet him. So I was talking to him every 6 to 8 weeks, checking in and guiding me. And John was my coach. John is also a brilliant man. He's actually moved out here to Boulder, and he's a brilliant teacher. And him and I kind of have a simpatico vision. We're both into be like, okay, how can we take the Tibetan stuff and add other things? He's really into like purification. He's done all kinds of weird alternative healings. And he's into Western esoteric. He's a brilliant guy, and we have ongoing conversations about how we can like merge Tibetan Buddhism with other things to make Buddhists faster. How can we be one with our heart and soul? How can we have this Christ consciousness? Yeah, John, I love you. Thank you. Brilliant. Honored that I teach you. All right, so I talked about gnosis, knowing the light of truth and why it's important. So basically, these are different names in my opinion for the same thing. Gnosis comes from the Gnostics, which is like a Christian, an early Christian that kind of got like suppressed. It was a little more esoteric. I don't think the powers that be, like the Gnostics were like one of the people giving like the more pure teaching. I'm not saying this is the ultimate truth, but some people say the Gnostic teachings are a little bit more pure into some of what Jesus was saying, and there's this whole thing about the Nag Hammadi library where they dug up some old stuff. I don't get too into that angle, but just to give you some knowledge. Knowing is a word I got from the Tibetans, and that's what Dan uses. The light of truth is another teacher I talk about. I'll talk about more later. He was Donnie Epstein. He talks about talking to what he would call like the soul intelligence, which just gives you bang, something from another dimension just comes in and gives you some insight. It could be intuition. So different names, different, but basically you're tapping in to what I was saying before, you're tapping into like a bigger picture. It could be your soul, it could be universal spirit, and you're getting wisdom from beyond. And I'm going to talk about how that happened for me a little bit. It's a weird experience. It was a weird experience for me. It's like, whoa, what is this? Thank God I had some teachers who, times are almost like, it's not, because it's outside of the mainstream, and so it doesn't necessarily mean omniscience. It means like the spirit knows what you need to do right now. And in my experience, it's something that you cultivate deeper and deeper and deeper. It's not like one day you go from. It's like almost a different operating system, like an upgrade. So it's a big deal. I'm going to talk about that. And this is actually it was a huge shift for me because I'm like this very analytical guy. I like to write down pros and cons, and literally my mantra, probably before I started studying this stuff, was like, how can I give myself the best percent chance? I'm like calculating odds. Like this is my nerdy way of going about life. No wonder maybe I could multiply a long-term relationship. It wasn't feelings-based, but I was very in my head. That's where I was at, and that's how I was operating. But this was telling me, no, you can just feel the truth. You can feel the truth. It's what you need to do, and that was a big, especially from where I was. That was new and weird. All right, so I'm gonna transition to like a little bit of some stories of my transition of this knowing. So first time it ever happened to me, I'm like been meditating like 6 months. So I say this is consciously happening, and I'm sure my soul's been intervening in my life unconsciously, but this is very conscious. I'm sitting on my computer, I'm on Facebook, and somebody posts a movie, and I hear a voice go, "Jonathan, you gotta watch that movie." I'm like, okay, you said that. Go into my apartment. I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like it was oh, that was weird.
guess I gotta watch the movie. It's like, well, I gotta watch it. So I watched this movie, it's called Thrive, and it opened me up to some new ideas about reality. It was like talking about alternative energy sources and things that might be conspiracy, and things about how the banking system really works, and UFOs. And the guy was like this. It was Foster Gamble, and he seemed really credible. Like went to Yale, I think, and very well spoken, very well researched. Well, these are all different, but that guy seems credible. So I was like, I don't know. I was like, I guess I'll look into it. And then, boom, 2.5 years I spent like hardcore. Became like an obsession. Like so, like that one incident took my life in a whole other direction. And I started getting informed by like alternative like ideas. So that was like my first big one. So when I first started having knowing, it was very infrequent. Like it was, I don't know if after I had this one, it may have been, a year or so or later before I had one. So then the second big one was I got a call from someone. It's like, your friend, this guy who I've known for 15, 20 years. He's been a professional colleague. This guy, his name was Charlie Lutira. Did some coaching with him, and he did a lot of teaching, co-teaching together of these other people. We were really both committed to teaching other people interested in disorders as well. So there's a close heart connection, and he died. And I was like, and it kind of came suddenly. It's like a cancer thing. But the point of bringing it up was like, I got off the phone and was like, Jonathan, you're gonna go. I got this voice again, out of the blue. It's like you're gonna go to this funeral wake, and you're gonna see someone you're passing, and to tell you something super important. That's weird. So, all right, whatever. I was gonna go anyway, so I gotta go honor my friend. So I go there, and I meet an old friend. This guy, Steve. It was kind of clear that we hadn't seen each other in a while. It was like a deep connection, and he was all into like alternative healing, and he handed me this. It was clear his name of this guy, Dell. He's like, this guy's an unbelievable, crazy healer, massage, and I was like, all right. And then I took out a name. Anyways, fast forward. It took me a while to call him, and then I did. The first thing was like he was like amazing because he was like a different kind of massage. He was actually removing blockages between the spine and so that the nervous system could connect to all the organs. And he really helped me. I think I was like a all in my head kind of guy. I was all nervous and out of my body. So my body was like stiff. I had lifted weights and not stretched, and so like I was like a stiff dude. And he helped me get kind of loose. But the real gift it was is he was starting to tell me, he was like, Jonathan, I do this thing. You shouldn't do all this weightlifting. It's causing you to be stiff and causing all these problems. And I was like, no, I'm big you don't understand. But he was like, no, you can do this chi stuff. I got this amazing chi program, and it's like other level. And I'm like, all right, or whatever. I got my own thing. And circumstances changed, and I ended up getting like this tumor in my thyroid. And he was like saying, yeah, see, this is how your body gets tight. It can communicate. And whatever, scared the shit out of me. It wasn't cancerous. I'm fine. I was like, here. But that was like one of those oh shit moments. And I was like, well, maybe I should try this chi. So I was like, wow, screw it. And holy shit, this chi was ridiculous. Like, it's very esoteric. This guy, his name is Sifu Rob Jones, and he just like went all around Asia, and he combined like science and all these like esoteric teachers. And man, it got your energy up fast, and my muscles didn't get tight. So I was like, whoa, it became like my new kind of technique. I felt like I always needed some sort of more energy to help me with my meditations and be better in life. And so I wasn't going to give up the exercise unless I had something to replace it. So it was a huge shift, and continues to be super huge. And then the last one, this is probably the strangest one of all, but I feel a little vulnerable talking about this. This is way outside of the mainstream. So, all right, this is like 5 or 6 years ago, and I'm like imagining of having the career I'm having now, but I was starting it then, and I was like, just make videos, and I was like, all in my head anyway. So I was walking around envisioning these videos. How am I going to take these spiritual concepts and put it into a video? And I remember the first thing was like I was like walking back to my car from work, and I thought to myself, man, we can use our minds to manifest stuff. Like if I said a rabbit they just come, like a rabbit, they just come. And I swear, the exact moment I had that thought, a rabbit whizzed across my feet. And I was like, what? Like literally like, are you serious? Like that's impossible. Like rabbits don't come towards you, they're like afraid of you. Like I was like totally freaked out. I was like what the hell's going on? Like I didn't know. It was like, I don't know, I feel like the universe is starting this path of like, yeah, maybe this isn't physical John thing, you know? And then fast forward, there's like a couple weeks later, I got back to my apartment complex and this voice is like, Jonathan, go walk to the very back of your apartment. And I'm like, what's there? I've never even been back there. Just trust me, just go, just come on, Jonathan. So I'm like, all right, voice, whatever. You know? So I go all the way back, nothing's happening. I'm like walking around, nothing's happening. I'm like, oh, a little skeptical. And I get to the very back end, and then there's at the very edge between like the forest where it ends, and there's just like a rabbit staring at me. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And then like, the next day, I'm gonna go back home, and I have a little walk from where my car is to where I get into my condo. And I start to walk back, and boom, a rabbit shoots past my feet. And like I walked this a million times, I'd never seen rabbits there before. I was like, that's weird. And then it started like happening like every day. I would notice, or maybe not every day, but frequently when I was either at home or at work, rabbits were like running past me. And I was like, well, this is really weird. But I always associated it in my mind as like, well, I guess I'm on the right path. Something weird's happening. Other part of me was like, am I crazy? So there was a little bit of both those conversations, and there weren't that many people that I had to talk about that. So getting into that, I want to honor a couple teachers. I mentioned this guy, Sifu Rob Jones. He really changed my life. Bringing up the chi really changed my perceptions, my energy level, and I've talked to him on the phone a million times. I don't even know what he looks like, so I would show a picture of you, but I don't know what he looks like. He wants to keep it on the down low. But his school is good at energy, so Sifu Rob Jones, I love you. Thank you for influencing my life. And so I mentioned like not having people to talk about stuff with. This is another one of my teachers, this guy Neil Kramer, and he's amazing. He's like one of the most open-minded, heart-centric, kind of analytical guys I've ever met. He's the first person that I ever met like publicly that was talking about like spirituality, very open-minded, development, consciousness, and what he calls dark unveiling. Some people might call conspiracy or parapolitical politics, but like the subtleness that's going on behind the scenes and the power games. And he was talking about all of it, and he's like, his background's in Hermeticism. He's really into Western esoteric spirituality. So he was like one of my primary teachers for understanding that. And I felt like John too, my guy John Church was another coach, but thank God I had those people in my life, because when all these weird things were happening to me, I was like, part of me's like, am I okay? But then they would see me, it's like, oh no, Jonathan, this is a totem animal. Oh, a totem animal, okay. So I'm like, Googling that, it's like, I feel like I'm in like this new age kind of area, but it's like, well, maybe there's something to some of this stuff. And so you could read about, and he's like, yeah, why don't you go to a place where you could buy a rabbit and go sit with it and look at it, and like there's the universe trying to tell you something through this. And so he helped, explain more rational, help me kind of deal with it. And I so many weird things happened to me, and thank God I had him and John particularly were people I was talking to on a very regular basis when this transformation kind of was happening, when I was like connecting to energies, different, like higher energies with different perspectives, different worldviews. And so now that I've kind of been through that, and I can kind of say like, I went through all that, and actually it's all helpful and good. I certainly want to be that for other people. I think we need more people. I feel like humanity's, our consciousness is getting higher, we're ascending, and we need more leaders who can kind of be like, no, this isn't weird, and give a very logical framework for it. So I think this is one of the things I feel called to, is to be like a bridge person, someone who was deeply in this materialistic kind of career, capitalist worldview, and then kind of like I didn't have any special spirit. I know some people just come in with gifts, I developed them all through different trainings. So because I did it that way, I can explain it. I can explain how I did it and help other people do it. So I definitely feel inspired to share what I've learned, share my experiences, and the how. That's one of the things I was doing in my other career. It was all about the how of change. I feel like Ken Wilber, he's got all these maps about how like consciousness, like these different levels and lines of it. And my gift is like, how do you actually navigate that in an efficient, effective way, and be very, strategic with your time and effort, so you're getting like the maximum, so you can do it in a pace that's good. You're not stuck. I didn't like that feeling of being stuck, and now I feel like I'm really constantly growing, and I want to give that gift to I know other people who are yearning for more and who also feel that stuckness. So I'm very passionate about that. Let's see. All right. Oh, spiritual boogeymen. So an individual egoic defense mechanism. So I would say like one way you could feel from a feeling perspective, especially your boogeyman, is something that just makes you go, it's like it causes you grab, like, that thing's happening again, or that. It's like our projections or something. A projection is like something nasty we feel about ourselves, and we tend to project it onto others. So something you might dislike outside of you is probably telling you something you've not purified yourself, or something holding within you. And so those are like biasing your view, like they're coloring. Everybody has them. Nobody not has them unless you're gone through the full path. So, and not too many people have done that. We're talking like way less than 1%. So we've all got work to do. I've done a lot of this work, and there's always more. There's an end. But I mean, you can go far, and there's more of it. So that's kind of like what I call a boogeyman, something that's like, and that can also be like, like looking at like your just uncomfortable feelings about things. I think as you get more energy, you get more like higher perspectives, and things start to make more sense, and you start to feel good. You kind of see them through this more process perspective, and so it's not just sort of things that are inside you, but it can also be like about how the world is. And so part of what I want to talk about is like, how do we do that? How do we get in flow with the world? Like one isn't just flow with your own mind and not just one, but it's also flow of like how we work together, like as in systems and in culture, and how do we get aligned with that. So I talked about this a little bit before about the egoic defense mechanisms. I just want to go that in a little bit more depth. I took this class called Landmark a while ago. It was probably the best class to really define how this actually works. I just want to break it into like a couple parts. We all have multiple egoic defenses, but everybody has a core wound. One that's the deepest, just the most painful wound you could possibly have. And it always has a structure, the same structure. Something happens, or it could be a one-time event, or it could be a serial kind of thing, and person makes up something nasty about themselves, like really nasty. So for me, it was like, I'm a loser. That was the thing that I made up. And it took me a long time to get to that. Those things, we buried those things. And then it has a structure of, I'm covering something up. So I'm a loser, why? So why did I think I was a loser? Because in this lifetime, at least, I used to, like as a kid, I used to like emote easily. I cried, sensitive, and that wasn't okay for boys, or at least according to the cultural field. And I was bullied, and I was just like this nice kid with parents of social workers, and they were like, no, you can't do that, and so I was called a crybaby, and eventually it got too much, and I was ridiculed too much, and I was 11 in the 5th grade, and I remember this moment like night and day. I actually changed my being. Like the pain got so intense. I was like, I don't want to be this anymore. I don't want to, like, there was a moment, I was like, I don't want to be, I felt humiliated, all this humiliation. And so I actually decided to be invincible, or pretend to be invincible, to mask my vulnerability. I was pretending. But I actually came up with this structure, or way of being, where I was like, you can't hurt me. And I was using my mind was my strength, or one of my core strengths, and I was like taking perspectives on things about why that thing that was my sensitivity was causing me. And I was like doing all these mental dances, and that's why I was ADD. People said it was, some brain chemistry, but it turned out, as I got into my own mind, it wasn't really true. It was just like
I created this way of being to manage this stress. And so I was very distracted because I was doing mental gymnastics, and I wasn't terribly aware of it until I started meditating. It was just happening in the background. I just knew that I couldn't focus to save my life. and so yes, there's a very important structure. Your thing with inadequacy, the thing that you're covering up, and then you do the exact opposite. I think the landmark is called the act. It's the act you do, like the invincibility technique. It was very useful to someone in that time. I don't see a lot of they got that part nailed. And so these spiritual boogeymen also got exposed to parts work. And so parts work is just instead of seeing everything is kind of one big thing, you start to go in your own mind and see these different parts, these different voices. And it turned out I've got a zillion different voices for different reasons. And so there's these one parts. It's very similar to the core wounds called manager protectors. But we tend to have these different traumas, and we come up with another voice it's gonna remind you of that trauma. It's what projection is like. Don't do that. Don't. Let's say you got a bad wound with a romance, and some part of me would be I don't know, I'm gonna steer you away from that because I remember that you had a terrible experience. That's what I think my job. And manager protectors, when you make them, they don't realize you're changing. They're like a part you create in that moment. And if you learn to dialogue with them, they'll tell you, you created me when I was this age, and that's how I see you, and to do this job. And they just keep doing their job until you learn how to not listen to them. That's a whole process, but that's a big deal. And then the last thing, the more deeper I got into my own work, and I was again, I came from the materialist world, but I started having experiences that made it clear that all the wounds I have from this life were actually traumas that I had in another life, and that I didn't process them. I didn't do the Buddha path of those things, and so I was the universe was you didn't finish that, so now you gotta do it in this life. And so I was re-wounded in this life in the exact, not to have the same flavor wound. It's not the same it didn't happen in the exact same events, but the life was energetically constructed that I would be wounded, so I'd have to deal with that same core issue. So that was cool. Okay. So yes, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about at a high level, what does that look like to heal spiritual boogeyman? So one of the great things about meditation is that it allows you to get access to what's going on in your mind, to subtle levels. You start to distance yourself start to see yourself as this witness, and you back away from these thoughts, feelings, sensations. They're not really you. They're just happening to you. And so you do meditation and altered states is another thing. It's almost like a basically blow up what's happening in your mind. It's another. And altered states don't have to be drugs. They can be breath work. So then we've got. So then there's a practice of seeing your wounds from a different perspective, seeing the gift of the energy of wounds. A lot of things get stuck because they feel painful. But if you learn to see them from a different perspective, then see them like the wound is actual gift, then it's easier to let them kind of come up and the energy kind of just goes. So there's a whole process around that. And then I discovered that these traumas, it wasn't just in my mind, it was in my body. I had to sometimes shed Kundalini energy or different energies or subtle energy practices to see energy come in your body, or could use somatic therapies where what I discovered is that there were just doing one level wasn't enough. Right? At each level helped, and I got more energy and more freedom. But the more levels I learned within myself in different areas, the more energy I got, and the more that problem would just start going down. And some things are fast. You can get a healing in a certain area. God, and some these core wounds, man, they're a bitch. and it's kind of I think you feel so good, and you have so much higher energy doing it. It's I don't know, spirit makes us work for it. I don't know, but it's one way of looking at it. I even got to a point where I actually had to find out I had a part of me that was suppressing all the really nasty shit. It took me way deep into my process. It was probably just 2 years ago.
I actually had to have a conversation. I didn't even know that part of me existed. And I'm like, oh, there's other shit that I don't even know about that you're expressing. I actually like, I remember the first night I did, I was like, all right, I guess you're ready. And like, I don't know, it was like, all right, well, you're expressing shit about death for sure, and humiliation's big for you, and something about a car accident. And I remember, this is sort of an embarrassing story, but I actually, like, after I had that experience, I was like, I kept having these visions that I was gonna, if I got in a car, I would die and I would be humiliated. Like, but I couldn't, I got so fearful, like when it first happened, I was supposed to have this like spinal adjustments, and I was like, I actually like called up my practitioner and was like, I know this is weird, but you should come over to my house and do this adjustment. I think it would really help me. Thank God we had a good relationship and she let me. But anyways, I found out there are like levels to this stuff, and so and then the last big thing I noticed is that you don't just let go of old habits, you replace them with better habits. So the only reason that like a lot of these like things would give up is that I had to convince them. I was like, I got actually new habits. I don't need to rely on you kind of anymore. And so that's a different piece of it.
Sweet. We're back. Yeah. So yeah, I'm very appreciative of when the first time we worked together. Okay, so all right. Ooh. So, all right. Somebody was mentioning the break about vulnerability. I'm gonna up that a little bit here. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about. Yeah, this has been a big part of my life actually. Really just the last four years that I feel like particularly I've been focused on. Like I had this period of time where the meditation was really big and the exercise, and it was like getting my vessel strong. Looking back on it, I was like, I don't know if you've heard of these terms before, like divine masculine and divine feminine, and it was really getting my vehicle up. I think it was really working on the meditation is more divine masculine, and most you guys probably know this, but for those who don't know, all males and females have divine masculine and divine feminine. We all need that. And so like the divine masculine is this part of like this space holding, this like strength, like, and so it was like teaching me how can I be with like anything, like how can I really be with anything. And then like the divine feminine is like this energy, it's the action, it's the excitement, it's like the highs, the lows, and like that's kind of like how some spiritual teachers will teach it that way. There's more to those energies, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to use those analogies. And so one of the path my knowing started increasing over time. So, first it was like once in a blue moon, but then it was like starting to become like, all right, Jonathan, I want you to do this, or I want you to do that. And slowly over time, I got to see, what I'm guiding you is like, what Dan's teaching you and the Tibetans are teaching you is an awesome method, and it showed you a path. But guess what, dude? It takes those people, people in Tibet were just in caves meditating. Like, it's not going to work in the way. I mean, it's not that it doesn't work. It just takes time. It's like there are two ways to really change things. One is this like persistent new habit, where every day I do this meditation and I see the world through a different way. So that's one way, and both methods are awesome, and I use both of them. But the other method is a bit faster. It's the extreme experience method. So sometimes you can have like a big experience that can change things faster. And so I think what Spirit was saying is like, all right, Jonathan, I can tell you're passionate and you're serious and you have a strong vessel. You've earned this with this meditation. You're ready to do the more high-powered techniques, and you can use them in a way where you can get a lot out of them. Because I'll tell you, I've done a lot of, I'll say for the some people have bad experiences, some people have medium experiences, some people have like super crazy, I've seen the range, and I'm glad the way Spirit did it with me, because by the time I started to do this, my vessel was strong. I was ready, I wasn't afraid of my feelings anymore. I knew that they were just information. I was ready to take in more. So I think just watching some YouTube documentaries, I got exposed to like ayahuasca. That was the first one. I hadn't, I was like a guy, I'm not like, I think I like in undergrad I'd done some like pot and experimented with some LSD a little bit like here and there, but I wasn't like super huge into it. Maybe like smoke on weekends, and then as I kind of got older, it was more like a once in a while I smoked pot. But it wasn't like drugs were like a big part of my life. Never had anything against it. I always had a good time, but I wasn't really using them spiritually. It was more just like having experiences. And now it's like saying, no, now we're going to use them with intention. We're going to direct the energy for a healing purpose, and you're going to have a radically different experience. So yeah, I kind of wanted to like, to kind of, for several reasons, I think I'm going to sort of talk about my first experience with ayahuasca. I think it'll, bring a little more storytelling, and kind of get, it's a good story. It's also showing how I'm into mixing things. On this example, I'm mixing heart work with like altered states, intention, and some meditation stuff. And so I'm just going to tell the story. So this is the first time I ever did ayahuasca, and I got guided to this Colombian shaman. Supposedly they have really powerful medicine. And of course I'm nervous, and like, I don't know what to say about it. It's like 25 years, 20 years, or something like a powerful one. It's like, like whatever. And anytime I do all the shit, even though I'm experienced now, there's always a little bit of nervousness. And that's normal. But anyways, my intention, I think when you're doing these altered states, it's about directing the energy, and the more specific and targeted you can be, the more effective I find. I mean, it's fine. People can have good experiences, like I just want to be a better person, nothing wrong with that. But if you are, it's my direct experience both with myself and my other, the more targeted you are, the more response you get. And so I was just like, Mother Ayahuasca, please help me feel more. Like I'm all in my head, and I've got some critical distance. Like before, I didn't know what was going on in my head. Now I can see I'm having those thoughts. I don't feel like the intensity of my feelings. I really like help with that, and like you take this, when you take ayahuasca, you take it in a cup. Oh my God, it's disgusting. Especially this man. But and it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to kind of kick in. And so I remember just like it's just like please, whatever spirits or whatever is going on, Mother Ayahuasca, Pachamama, please help me feel it, please help me feel it, please help me feel it. I feel like feeling it deeply, I'm serious. I'm here for the healing. And so I'm like doing some meditation, I'm just ready for whatever, and I'm sitting there, I take the medicine, and first thing happens is my stomach's upset, which happens. And I'm like, wow, listen, I'm feeling something. It wasn't pleasant, but just trying to stay out there, like telling me, everyone, the coach, like trying to keep your body out in this meditation position, and I'm just like feeling it, and it's getting more and more intense, more and more intense, and then bang, something happened to change my life. Right within an hour, I got this thought, and I'd never heard it before. It was like, holy shit, this is so intense, I gotta go to my head right now. And I was like, whoa. I never seen that. I was like, I remember I talked about like a microscope. There's something about these psychedelics that show you stuff that's going on in the subtleties of your mind. And right there, I just knew. I was like, wow, how did I not miss that? It's like I have some story inside of me that I cannot handle intensity. And I intuitively had kind of all this background in change, development. My parents were like social workers, and I used to work in psychology. But I have this psychology background, some art experience, and some therapy in my life. I immediately got into this, knew to get into this dialogue. And I'm sure the medicine was helping me too. Because it gives you more energy, more coherent energy. So I have all these things kind of working for me. And I'll never forget that. I was just like, oh, I get it. I see that, like, I was overwhelmed by emotions, and I made up this story that I can't handle it, and I made up a part to like mimic what I could feel. And I was like, I just got into like the ego, or like the main part of me, the control state, was like talking to that part that the pain body or the feeling body or this part that limits it, and I was just in this dialogue, and I was just like, oh,
Dear body, I'm sorry I've been ignoring you all these years. I'm sorry I've been ignoring you. But I'm here to tell you, I'm here today to change my relationship with you. I'm here to change my relationship with you. I know it's probably been at least 35 years since I told you to limit my feelings, but I'm different now, and I'm ready. I'm ready to have a different experience. I'm ready to have a different experience. And I'm sorry. I'm just sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I was just got into this dialogue, and that was just like a couple seconds. I was doing that for like an hour, something like that. Really intense. And then eventually I took poop, got it out of me, my stomach didn't feel it. And I went to sit down and feel like, oh, finally that's out of my system. And relax, and then they were like, oh, who wants a second cup of ayahuasca? just gotten kind of over it. I'm like, all right, well, I came here to transform. So I go up to the altar, and I've worked with this. This is the first time I worked with a shaman, but I ended up working with the same shaman. I think I did like 10 nights with him over several years. And he did something on this night that I've never seen him do with me or with anyone else. He went to pour my cup, and then he stopped, and he's like, he spoke Spanish, and I didn't, I didn't know what he was thinking, but he just walked over the side, and he had like this, kind of like, he's from Colombia, and he had like all this dress on, and he started chanting, and he started pacing, and I was like a whole like rituals going on. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh no, I'm just here. And then he gave me the cup, and I went back, and I was like, and I should mention that we were inside, and we were supposed to be outside, but it was like a crazy, crazy thunderstorm. It was like thunder, lightning, raining cats and dogs outside, like really nasty. So I took this second cup, and whoa, I was like not feeling well at all. And we had these buckets in case you got to purge, and I purged at least some of it, and then everyone was a massive amount of people. There were probably like 50 people there in the ceremony, and people were like, oh, take it outside. Because like I think they all wanted to puke too, and sometimes when one person pukes, there's like a chain reaction and stuff. So people were just like, don't do that here. And so I was like, So I took my bucket, and I kind of like half puked, but still had somewhere to go. And then I was like, had in my mind that like, I gotta go. There's an altar outside to go puke at. And I was like, and I started to take a step outside, and I was like, it's raining. Like, I can't do that. I just like kind of turned around, and I went back, and I was like, something like, I don't know, I felt like I had made this promise to like, I don't know, I felt it deeply that I was like supposed to be out there, like to puke outside. And I was like, really? And then I had like just made this promise to my feeling body that I was going to listen to it. When I was doing that little rant, it was like, I'm going to listen to you. Oh, seriously. And they're like, oh, really? Well, it seems like just an hour later, now you're not going to listen to me. And I was like, okay. I took a walk outside again, and I was like, oh, it's yucky. I'm getting soaking wet. I don't have any rain gear. I don't have any shoes on. I'm like wobbling because I'm tripping. And I was just like, and it became clear, this is a test. Like a test, or what some people call a spiritual initiation, which I've had many, and there are along in the past. And it became clear to me, I needed to do this. This was part of it. And I was like, part of me just didn't want to go out there. It was cold, it was nasty, and I had this like dialogue with myself. It's just like, all right, Jonathan, what did you come here to do? What did you come here to do, Jonathan? Did you come here to pussy out, or did you come here to transform? Did you come here to change? And I was like kind of like gut check time. It was like, oh wow. I was like, all right. So I was like, I was sitting there waiting, another 20 minutes passed by, and finally I'm just like, I have to do this. And I just like forced myself to go outside in this rainstorm. And I remember walking out there and just getting rained and wet and squishy. And it's like 100 yards away. It was like a tiki torch and a place to throw up. And then all of a sudden, like I didn't have to barf. And I was just like, I started back with this inner dialogue. And I was like, okay, feeling body, whatever you want, like, if you got to puke, you don't want to puke. I'm here in it for the long run. I'm here to convince you and tell you that I'm a different person. I'm changed. And I'm really sorry about what happened before. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm sorry. And it just like was staying with it. And I was just like,
I started to have to puke again, and then I didn't have to puke, and I was just like kind of back and forth, and I was just like, I just like committed to staying to it, and I was like having this dialogue over, and at one point in time, I was like, I can't take this rain anymore, and I ran into like a shed, and I kind of put my hand down, and then boom, I felt like I cut myself, and I popped out, and I was like, oh great, I'm like bleeding everywhere now. Like, it wasn't like life or death, but it was like a big cut, and I was like, all right, you're really testing me now. But I still didn't was like in this ambiguous place about whether I had to puke or not, and I just kind of stayed with it, and I just like kept listening to myself, and just like having this dialogue of, I'm sorry, and I'm different now, I'm committed, I'm serious, I'm here to make a change. I'm listening to you, I'm listening, and I'm seeing this through, and eventually, I think I was out there like an hour, just in this rain, and I eventually made it over to the torch, and I finally threw up, and I remember I just like collapsed from exhaustion. And I was almost like, just couldn't move because I was so tired, and I like felt like my mind was like scrambling. It was like some sort of download or whatever, and things were changing. And I think it was just like these parts were like going, oh, this guy's serious. Like he actually means it. He actually wants to change, and like I had to like reconsider. It was just like a pivot moment. That didn't change all my problems, but it was like an important baby step of like, yeah, maybe there's something possible. Maybe this big wound. And then just one other funny story. The second night, we did go outside, and at some point in time, I had to poop, and I went to these outdoor potties that were like right outside the circle. And so I went in there, and I really had to go. I kind of waited as long as possible. And I sat down, like this, dropped trowel, and then the door blows, it just opens. Right? Not blows, there's no wind, it just opens. And I'm like, oh. I was like kind of put down like this, like, and I go to get ready about to release, and the door opens again. Like, seriously, I'm like, are you kidding me? And then it happened a third time, and then I was about to go, and then it happened a fourth time, and then I was like, I can't keep doing this, I gotta go. And then somebody came up and just slammed it as hard as they could, and the door like closed, I don't want to see this guy poop, I don't blame them. It was like the whole circle was right there, and then it happened the same. It opened again, and another person did it, and then it opened again, and then I was just like, fuck it, I have to go. It's exploding, my intestines are exploding, and I just remember sitting there like, oh god, everyone can see me, and I'm like pooping my brains out, and whatever. And I realized afterwards it was like, yeah, because vulnerability was such a big issue. It was forcing me into a situation that's vulnerable and showing me I can be okay with it. Because I had a story, I was showing earlier, that I can't handle vulnerability. And it also started opening me as I don't think this world is physical, because I talked to everyone else and the door worked fine for everyone else. They were using it all night. It just opened for me that many times in a row. It's I don't know about this physical reality thing. Anyway, I just wanted to give some anecdotes about story. And these can be really powerful medicines. And I definitely want to talk about that. I know and how to use them. How do we use that time effectively? And altered states are not always just psychedelics. You can use breath work. There's a zillion different types. There's something called a harmonic egg. They have all over Colorado where you can lie in this egg-shaped device, and they play music, and they play cymbals and lights, and that creates kind of an altered state experience. So you don't have to be doing psychedelics, but I just wanted to point out it's a really important tool. And so I've also been guided to a lot of different kinds of other healing. I know this is just a small list of some things, but network spinal analysis has been really a big one for me. That's just this, it works with the nervous system in the spine, and they, instead of these chiropractors, instead of cracking your bones, they do these subtle touches, and they're mixing their field with your field, and they move energy around, and it not only fixes you physically, but also psycho-spiritually. I actually go there and I think about, I get a lot of insights, and I want to get them into my nervous system so I can be them instead of just think about them. It's just, again, it's this idea of thinking about them over and over again, as a persistent method versus having a fast method. So this one's been a game changer for me, so that's why I want to mention that one. And I mentioned parts work before, and
past lives is something that's like, I don't know, I've had a lot of techniques that come up. There's this one therapy in my Boston, it's amazing, where they do this like reflexology or muscle testing, like where they kind of like the body knows more than the mind does, and like you can ask it questions. So like you'd have me put my arm out, and we'd ask questions like, is your name Jonathan? Is your name Fred? It's like, and we would use it to kind of like, and they had this like really elaborate protocols. Like this guy was like I think a psychologist was also into like different modalities of healing, and this crazy tool. But it was one of the most fastest therapies I've ever had. Is like what they would do is they ask all these questions with this protocol, and then they drop you in, and I would just re-experience traumas from this life or somewhere from other lives or some even weird stuff. But it was really powerful and life altering and helped me see things in my consciousness that I had no idea were there. So I just want to mention that one. I think I talked about movement already. Somatic therapies is just like, I have these like, this idea that the therapy, that the whole trauma in the body, there's a great book, The Body Knows the Score. And I found that true, that I've had these different like, I've done things like we're doing massage and like shamanic kind of visioning, and they'd be like, okay, like, I'm feeling something tight here, what is it really tight here, what is this? And like, you just trust it, oh, so that's that wound. And if I go in there, you're like, ah, but then like you're actually releasing it from the body. Man, you feel so much better, you feel so lighter afterwards. Like short-term pain for long-term gain, that's worth it. And there's a lot of different therapies like that. I had also like healers that like, I don't know, like just like pull energy out, and see like things in you. I've had people like see energies and kind of pull it out of you. Some people just have gifts. So there's a lot of stuff out there. I've tried so many crazy healing modalities. People who know me know this is true a long way. My parents were like, I can't keep track of what you're doing. And so that's one of my passions, is like how do we synthesize them and get them so we can do this stuff faster. Because I really think this is, the world needs it. There's a lot of problems now, and we need people connected with their souls, people with this part that knows and sees like a bigger picture. So I'm really passionate about that. I wanted to, so speaking of teachers, Donnie Epstein is the guy who invented network spinal analysis, and he's also he's very brilliant. He's this guy about epi-energetics, which I'm going to bring up quickly. But he's like he actually, when he was growing up, he tells a story that he didn't see people's faces, he would just see data streams that like happened before. And he kind of increased his energy before he could see. Like it's really out there. He's born with this crazy gift to see information before it even turns into manifestation. And so and right now I'm studying with him about, so not only do you invent network spinals, but he's studying with these things, how can you actually align with these primordial energies, what are they, and what are the like hand motions. It's almost like spell casting. Like I never thought of myself as like a wizard or a sorcerer, and then I started taking this class, and he was like, yeah, Jonathan, you're manipulating energy to help yourself and others have a bigger impact. So it's definitely something I want to talk about him. I'm studying with him right now a lot currently. So I'm taking like this class I'm calling alchemy. I was in the first group of people he ever taught it to, and now he's in the second year. And I'm now taking the advanced class, but I'm teaching to be a mentor, a teacher of it, and to apply to people. There's only like, I think like 30, 40 people in the class. Now, this is one way I could say I'm definitely unique, is because like almost nobody knows this, and certainly nobody's doing these exact esoteric practices that I actually know. I'm bringing something that's different. So Donnie Epstein, you're a genius. I love you. I'm grateful that you came into my life. Okay, so I wanted to talk about what do I mean by embodied oneness and being one with your heart and soul. What does that mean on a practical level? Because we all want to have practical, we want to have real impact, we want to have more happiness, more joy, more help and service. So one thing I want to talk about this is there's not one definition for it. It's always moving. As we grow and deepen, it keeps evolving. This list I'm showing you is just like a brainstorm of stuff I want to point out now to bring it practical, but this is by no means a monopoly of what being oneness is. So that it keeps unfolding more and more deeper to me. So I just want to start to ground this, but also I don't want to reify this as the only way. Reify just means like make things solid. So I talked about this before, but one of the things is just being in relationship with the parts, all these different kinds of smarts with other people inside of us, our systems. How do we get into like a relationship that's positive? One thing that Donnie teaches is that like your perception on the world has to do with your current energy level. So if you have a positive perception on the different parts, then your energy is going to stay higher. Versus like if you start getting really like at a negative perception about some part, it's going to throw your whole energy off, and you're going to be less of a person. And so it's helpful. That doesn't mean that we deny things that are quote unquote negative, but another way to see it is like something that's like not working. It's just like a signal of that's something we need to get fixed. Or if you're feeling pain here, it's like, well, maybe we should examine that and see what's going on. It doesn't have to be, oh, this thing to avoid. It's like a signal. Like it's almost like a dashboard. I used to think it's like pain is like, oh, it's something to avoid. I hate that. But now it's more like, oh, it's like telling me something. There's like something's not right. Something's out of alignment. So I mentioned that I definitely think the parts within the mind, because everything, this is something I got from being a parent of social workers who taught me about psychology. I quickly realized everything we do goes in and out of our mind, because that's primary. We live in our consciousness. I mean, so mind's really important. So I definitely think how to transcend the traps of the mind is, for me, is super critical, because ultimately we're filtering everything through our mind. Then this is a big one. I talked about this parts work, but I discovered that I have all these different parts, and this part of me that's kind of like soul, like sometimes it's like, you know, we get different voices just telling us different things. Like how do we know which one's actually from our heart and which one's really a shadow wound? And that's not you. You have to get intimate with them. You have to get intimate with them. You have to notice the patterns, where they go. And these shadow parts can be sneaky. They can pretend to be your soul, but they're trying to protect you. So it's a process of intimacy, of getting to know what's going on in your own mind. So it does help first to have some distance or meditation, so you're even aware of your thoughts and feelings. And then you gotta it's like pattern recognition. That's how we learn things. We recognize patterns, and we start to going, okay, that's a part that's not serving me anymore. So I gotta what's that message? What I've learned is any one of these parts that are quote unquote causing me to have negative energy, they're teachers. There's the more I go into them, the best wisdom I got through life was through feeling that pain. It's like once I finally kind of felt it, then boom, wisdom bomb came down. I've had that over and over and over again. And the wisdom bombs help me be with reality. It helps me get into right relationship with parts. And so it's like the gift. So not only are they minimizing that impact or releasing that impact of that part, but then it's giving me tools to be with other parts. So it's like, boom, it's really, it's a powerful gift to do that kind of work. And it's, so that's one other part. And then being alive with the metaphysics and patterns of life. It's like being okay with what is. What if we actually just understood there's certain underlying patterns of life that are just happening over and over again. I'm going to give you a very simple one. This one is life altering. Once you really rock it, this 3-stage thing is constantly happening over and over and over and over and over again, always happening. Things are fused together. Just parts are together, and they're just one thing. It's like a block. We can't see it. We don't see it. Boom, doom, differentiation. Some piece, then we see, oh, that's a different part. We're learning different. It's like a new perspective. New science, could be physical, could be mental. Also, we're noticing there's a different part it's suddenly not fused with the whole. It's like, oh, there's this thing. It's kind of from mentally, I didn't know that all these different parts are in my head. I was just kind of one bundled experience walking around, and I'm not unconscious to it. It's unconscious to it. And then I started to get meditating, and I'm like, oh, now I see this pattern, and there's this guy I can distinct it. It's a distinction now. It's a new distinction. It's separation. And then once we have separations, you have an opportunity to change the relationship to it. Now it's oh, well, now it's a different thing. How am I going to take this with what I already knew? So it's the move towards integration. And how do we integrate it in a higher order so we have more energy, we have better experience of life, so more coherent energy, so more strategies. So that's just one pattern. Man, I'm telling you, that pattern is happening infinitely over and over in every domain of life. And what if we just started to see it with that? Oh, I know what that is. I know what's happening. And you know, first it's just an idea, but then, you know, we could do like a whole class on that one and like show how that's playing out in all these different, in our own lives and society's lives. And we can say, okay, well, how do we, now that we know what this pattern is, there are solutions to this pattern. And guess what, there is. There are meta solutions to meta kind of, you know, the pattern, the different ways of strategies of doing it. So I think this is a big one. I definitely want to talk about like, how do we align with the metaphysics of life? You know, just flowing with it. Oh, I know that. I see that pattern. I know how to master that. You know, you go from being like scared, nervous, uncertainty to be like, I know what's going on here. You know, it's like a different way of walking through. It's a new ability. So I have a couple more. Another thing about oneness is like being in tune with your body. Like at least for me, it's as big as some. I mean, some people have the opposite. Like they're out of touch with their head and they're all in their body. For me, so just like I'm like, so just being more awareness of whatever's going on within you. And more energies, more body sensations, more access to feelings, and actually you can feel it's all one field. Like if you go back to this idealism minus just kind of mind, so it's like we're all in this one same field, and we can feel feelings from other people's fields or other objects. In Chi class, I'd have us like take a rock and kind of feel like the energy of it, and when you amplify your thing, you can actually feel it, and like you can like then move objects, like you can start merging things. Like if you get really good at this stuff. I know people. I've seen Neil Kramer. He's made this movie, and he shows this thing like where he just puts his hand out and calls like a stick, it just pops up, and he says, "Look," he says, "Show me. This is how I did it. It's really about intimacy with that energy." And he spent years studying this, and I don't think it's something you can pick up fast, but you know, if you learn the skills, you can kind of merge with energies, and you can kind of have more esoteric powers. So there's like a logic to it. These people aren't just like freaks. There's like actually a methodology to all this stuff, and that would be like a whole like esoteric special skill thing. And so I know that kind of stuff. That's why I keep saying oneness just keeps deepening and deepening. But yeah, like feeling oneness is also just like a feeling. Like what if you're just like energized but yet relaxed and peaceful, and that was kind of your like way of being. You know, no matter like even if it got stressful, you're like, okay, I feel stressed, but I got this. You know, I got confidence. So another way. So and then like what if we just had like more and more peace on earth? I think oneness to me isn't just within us, because we want to have peace within systems and structures. So I definitely, I mean, there's definitely a focus on inner work here, but I'm definitely not going to shy away in this class about how do we apply skills to out there, because I'm not just about one domain of life. I think we need to apply oneness to our systems, our culture, our behavior, our mind, so all these things. So again, the last thing is just about alignment with what is. We're continuously learning. So what if we were like I talked about the Buddhists or just the process of life? So that there's just this process of flow. We have these critical minds that are constantly seeing the like separation of new things. And we it's just how minds are. You know, getting more and more distinction. So it's constantly kind of improving. So how do we like align with that? All right. So this one is about collective spiritual movement. I just want to mention this one briefly because I'm passionate about this one. But what I've noticed is that the outside is sometimes a mirror of the inside. You guys, there's this term of fractal patterns, like in math, where it's like self-replicating patterns. So this is like a consciousness view of kind of what's going on in the world, is that we think there's like these selfish ego, like bankers or corporations who are just trying to dominate us, and there's truth to that, or money power. But another like deeper way to look at this, and what I discovered is that there was like a point in life when we were like not that well developed, and we were like fighting each other. There's a lot of murder and just like fighting over resources. And I think there was like an energy that like people's consciousness, like some part was like, this isn't right. This isn't how things should be. And they created this energy like, well, we need someone to help us to stop killing each other. And through this, as part of the energy of this idea of kings and queens, that we have to have rulers and keep us from to help maintain order and peace out of this chaos. And there's this energy. It's like a manager, protector energy. And so this is my opinion, is that there are certain people who energetically think it's their job to manage us. And I have like a friend who grew up in these really rich super families, like banking, like crazy money, And he just says, look, Jonathan, I know these people, and they just see humans as they were about others. They need to be divided, they need to be managed, and if they don't do that, they're not doing their job. And that's how they see the world. They don't think they're doing evil, they just think this is their job. And so this defensive, egoic defensiveness not only has an individual, it has a collective. In my opinion, some of the same principles that moving beyond that are going to apply. So that's definitely something I want to talk about in future classes. What is the role of amplitude? So amplitude, this I think I really learned from my chi teacher, Super Rob Jones, about power. He's just showing me how to, he's basically, for John, the body is electric. It works exactly like an electric system. And I'm going to show you how to use these techniques, esoteric techniques, to increase the power so you can have more amplitude. And so there's one method, is this physical method. That's just physical. But what I've noticed, there are lots of ways to increase power. This is a word that I got from Donnie Epstein, which is this coherent energy, which is, so I already talked about fusion, differentiation, integration. So what I noticed is that Donnie calls this thing called stacking. So as we start to differentiate things, what if we stack them in different ways that give us more power? So we take these different perspectives and different abilities, and what if we put them in different ways where they organize, where it increases the amplitude? And knowing that and being conscious of that is really altered things for me. I mean, it's always happening, but now I'm conscious of it. I'm like, oh, how can I add this to this, like an alchemist? We can do a little here, a little this, we'll do a little essential oils, and we'll do this healing device, and then meditating, and then boom, man, it really makes a difference when you start doing it, not just randomly, but you start doing it in intelligent ways, you start understanding the different layers. It changes, it's a game changer, it speeds things up, and you feel better. You're just a better person. So I'm going to talk a lot about that. I talked about this earlier, but this idea of unbound energy. There's energy everywhere, and in the Buddhists, they talk about some people call it emptiness. My teachers say emptiness is really a better translation is openness. What if instead of the first thing we think about, opinion about something, is usually from a past wound. And so what they teach you is to no, let's not just assume that's just one way of looking at it. There's almost unlimited ways to look at things. So what if we actually in each moment we're just open, and then we're not binding the energy, and we let because now it's unbound, there's more energy, and you're allowed to have a more coherent, and you're more open to different perspectives. It's just another way to amplify power. So yeah, I think so I just was also breaking down. So I talked about the mental level of stacking projections. So emotionally, it's about the energy that's trapped in the body, and we can get it out. And I was talking about earlier before, these somatic therapies. And then there's physical things. It's definitely exercise helps. We all know that. We do yoga, we go mountain climbing, we have more energy, and just being healthy diets, supplements, whatever, our organs being flexible, all that. All of this. It's all these different things matter. And I think I was talking about earlier about people pulling out subtle energy boxes in the chakra system. There's so many. This is such a deep field. I'm still unpacking this one. I do have an aspiration of trying to organize it and make it more coherent, because it's kind of mysterious. But there's so many different subtle energies, and so that's a big domain. This is as we get deeper. And then the more we're aligned with the laws of the universe, the more our spiritual amplitude goes up, and that kind of gets into epi-energetics. Perfect. So epi-energetics, man, I'm so passionate about this. This is what I'm learning right now. So epi-energetics means the conscious and ecological use of energy and information to produce the extraordinary. So it's and ecological just means also matching the right amount of energy for the right context. So I'm taking this class right now called Alchemy. I think I mentioned it earlier. And what Donnie does is he introduces you to these different primordial energies about how things transform. There's different stages, or different seasons, there's different intelligences and influencers. I can do a class in each of them, and once you identify with them, but then he gives you tools how do you align with them? How do I use the soul intelligence and strategically, and how do I cast these energetic spells And I'm gonna teach that stuff. I mean, because that stuff like life altering. It speeds things up. It helps you make life work for you instead of like Donnie would call it before is efforting. It's like, well, if you know what you want, and you know how to manage the energy and connect it to power energies, literally what it'll do is it'll just happen. I'll just even give you an example related to this class. Like, I didn't know I was going to be teaching this soon. I got back from I was gone in the East Coast, and I came and I met with Tom here. He was, and I learned that they had changed, they had really organized stuff here, a little different. They give you like access to free rooms to be a member, and this was like a change since I've been gone. I've been gone for a couple of months, and my soul's just like, yep, look at that. The rooms are open, and now you're ready. I'm telling you, you're ready. Like, it's just like that. No effort. It's like, okay. It's just like listening to it, and like it just kind of like everything just magically happened, and I just meant to lean over our camera guy. Like everything just kind of flowed. Like I didn't have to put like tons of effort into it. It just like magically happened, and how I know it has to do with this connecting to the unbound, connecting to these energetic spells. And man, if I only taught you that, this would be. Your mind would explode, but I'm fitted with a lot of things. It's really powerful stuff. Oh, I wanted to thank a couple more teachers. So I want to thank my parents. My parents not only did they birth me, but and they raised me and did a good job. But any kind of like, there's this like generational thing wherever your parents are, you get their kind of good, all their qualities. Like it's a huge imprint, and I think it's common for people to like blame their parents for this or that, but this is just a natural flow of life. We're all turning different generational parents for specific things. And so I've learned to see them as gifts. So I have to say, Mom and Dad, I love you and thank you for everything, all your support. And they're both social workers, and they taught me about psychology. And so that helped me like have this role and bring this. So everything, just love you as teachers. And the last teacher, the nothing that created everything. Somehow we exist. I don't know. This is the one mystery that I'll never understand, how something actually exists. And I feel like we don't think about this enough. We don't think about the fact that just shit exists and we don't know how. We're never going to know how. And it's just like everything's a gift. And I try as much to live from that place and that energy. Is like, if there was something so powerful that you raised something out of nothing and they decided to keep it, it must be fucking good. It must be awesome. And so Embodied Oneness is like aligning with this energy and this perspective. So anyway, so here in the system, I don't know if people signed up through the app. If you're a non-member, then I think the charge is like $22 if you put it through the app, or you can put cash or Venmo or PayPal. You can also give donations. If you're in the system, there's also the option of giving points, and all this is kind of so I'm just putting my information, and also I do coaching, so just have my email. And yeah, just thank you. Thanks for my first session. It was a total delight, and I really appreciate everyone. And see you at future sessions. Thank you. Yeah.